Welcome back. What's up, everybody? Mike, here we are yet again. They were silly enough to give us another chance to do this. UFC Round-up. We're going to be doing this every couple of weeks, every 2 weeks. You can check us out here, and we're just going to cover all things MMA and UFC related. And obviously, we're coming off of a huge weekend of fights. We have so much to talk about here. Mike, how excited are you to be back here with me, my friend?
I am. I thought the same thing as you. They're crazy enough to give us our own show. I'm like, all right, this should be a lot of fun. Nothing I like more than talking fights. And, you know, I'm on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast. So essentially I get to hang out with you more often than I get to, Paul Felder. So I'm excited to share this opportunity with you. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And it looked like during the weigh-in show, not only did you have a lot of fun, my man, but you put a little whooping on our boy DC there. I believe you are now the double champ.
Yeah, I think I am after beating him in 2 games on the new UFC weigh-in show. Hopefully that takes off as well. I beat him in 2 games, beat him handedly. And I think the best part about it was he had to spell Islam Makhachev's name right. That was the question. And he turns to me and he gives me this, you know how many years I wrestled in Russia, Chiesa, and went on this huge spiel. And he spelled it wrong and I spelled it right. So got a good laugh out of that. Now, Paul, I know you got your big triathlon coming up. What's the date on that?
Well, I was supposed to be racing in Miami in March 14th. And obviously I'm out here in LA. I'm doing some stuff. I'll be in Vegas next week calling the fight. So it didn't work out. So June 6th is now the date. I'm training for it nonstop. I'm going to be doing a 70.3. It's a half Ironman type race. It's going to be under the Ironman banner. So this is their organization. In Roanoke, Virginia. So if anybody wants to go down there and still sign up and race with me, Mike, I mean, I know you got a road bike, my man. So I see you. I see you on Zwift. You're not putting up the numbers yet, but we're going to get you there.
You showed me these workouts you're doing, and they're pretty crazy. But I heard you had a little bit of a running mishap today. Tell me about this.
Yeah, it's not even. It's my body's mishap. That's the problem. Every time I run, I'm out there, and I feel like I could run a marathon, and then the next day I wake up and my feet are just destroyed. I don't know, something about the mechanics. I'm doing something wrong, but we'll get through it. Don't worry about it.
Hey, whether you're sore or not, the only thing that matters is the iron lung still runs strong. Yeah. Even though the body's banged up, we can still count on the iron lung.
Somehow it still functions. But let's get to the serious matter here. I mean, 259, 15 fights, 30 fighters, and performances just stacked from top to bottom. I mean, guys in the prelims were showing out. The finishes were nonstop in the beginning of that. And then the real big story that I think we really got to address is Jan Blachowicz going in there. He's always the underdog. He's always counted out. But that man's jab and composure in there was brilliant. He mixed in the takedowns, and I picked him to win. And nothing against Adesanya. I think he's a fantastic champion. I think he's going to reign over that middleweight division. But Jan, bro, the dude, right? I mean, this guy goes out there and flies out every time.
He looked phenomenal. I mean, and for me, I was on the other side of things. I had picked Israel Adesanya in that fight. I thought Jan was a little too flat-footed. I thought Izzy would move around, attack the weak sides, and just not put him away. But I just thought he'd cruise his way to a decision and do it fairly well. And Jan showed new wrinkles to his game with the wrestling. But I think what stood out more than the wrestling is throughout the fight, like you said, the consistency in the jab upstairs, the jab downstairs, and there's no load on it. And so essentially anytime – I always say that you have to react to Israel Adesanya's fakes and his feints because he can change that half a second feint or a fake into a strike. So you have to take the bait on him. And he did a good job addressing those and stepping in, landing the jab. And that's what set up the blitzing combinations. That's what set up the wrestling later in the fight. Just a brilliant performance all around.
Yeah, brilliant performance. And there was a lot of talk of those feints during the broadcast, right? Joe, DC, and John were talking about those feints. But meanwhile, while those feints were happening, Jan's landing that jab. He's landing that right hand. He rocked Izzy a couple times, moved him backwards. But really, ultimately, the takedowns in the 4th and 5th were just, I mean, he was able to crush him down there. And Izzy, that's when you saw the size difference, right? He wanted to stay at that weight. He didn't want to bulk up to move up to 205 pounds. We're talking about a 20-pound difference. When the grappling starts happening, that's when it's really going to show its head for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would imagine the Jan Blachowicz weighed around 225 pounds going into that octagon. I'm sure Izzy still weighed around 200. Now, both guys split ways. They go in their respective divisions. Obviously, Jan stays at 205. Izzy's got to go back down to middleweight. What do you see next for Jan Blachowicz in this division? I mean, there's Glover Teixeira waiting in the wings. You had Rakic with a performance. I mean, where would you want Jan Blachowicz to go from here?
Yeah, Rakic, no. I think you got to go with Glover, who's weighed in, right? He was ready to step in there on short notice to take that title fight. The guy's always ready. I don't care what age he is. He's shown that he has still got it. Whatever adjustments that he has made recently in his career, his family life, his training, I don't know what he did, but he's just got this a rejuvenation about him. And he's hungry to get that title. He's been there before. It didn't work out. And I think he's really clawed his way back into that position. I think he deserves it. I mean, I don't think you can deny that guy. I think that's the fight that you have to make. And now, with that performance, right, that Jan put on and beating a superstar like Adesanya, now people will pay attention. Maybe if that fight happens that night, I don't want to say nobody cares about it, because the MMA fans out there, the diehards, they do care, right? They know who Glover Teixeira is. But for the people that were trying to get more attention into this sport, that fight maybe would just fall by the wayside. Now people know that Polish power. They know who Blachowicz is.
Yeah, that's the win he needed. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. The Glover fight is the next fight for him. Glover is very deserving in the fight. He's put together some great performances in essentially the swan song of his career. Yeah. But this is the fight that needs to be made. And I agree. I mean, Jan, not a lot of people cared about Jan Blachowicz up until after this Saturday night. Now he's made a name for himself. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Now, on the other side of things, let's talk Israel Adesanya.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Like, do you feel like Israel Adesanya's stock dropped at all? Like, for me personally, I don't. I think that he took a chance. He went to up a division. It didn't affect anything that he'd already established prior to that. Essentially, you took a chance. Like, what do you think about Israel's stock and what's next for him? Like, what do you see next for him in the middleweight division?
Well, first of all, I agree. I don't think you lose stock when you like he would say, you go for greatness. You challenge yourself to be great. Sometimes you're going to have a slip up. You're going to lose. I think it's one of the best things that's probably going to happen to him in his career, because if you're going to lose the first fight that you're going to lose, why not be against the heavier champion? You're stepping up and taking this big risk. And yeah, it was a decision. He had moments of brilliance in that fight. He looked great. Early on in the fight, he was fast. The feints were really getting him off his game a little bit. But I think for him to go back down to middleweight, just stay there for a while. I don't think there's any big rush to try to be this double champ, right? That has kind of taken the UFC by storm right now. Whereas there's some other champions, Valentina, who wants to stay in their weight class and dominate over that spot. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to just stay in your division, make that money, and just clean it out.
I totally agree. I'm a little played out with the double champion stuff. It's just divisions get backed up. I remember back when I was 155 pounds and we were dealing with Connor as a dual champion. It just, what that's like. You're in the same weight class. So it's like essentially guys are stuck in a logjam because it's like the double champ now gets to dictate where they go. And that can be frustrating as the competitor. It can be frustrating as the fan. It can be frustrating for, the people behind the scenes, the matchmakers and the whole UFC staff. But for Israel Adesanya, I think that it is best to stay for him at middleweight. You look right now, essentially, we have like this 8-man bracket that's all going to boil down to, we have big marquee fights. We got Whitaker and Costa. We got Till and Vettori. We got Holland Brunson. We essentially, we have an 8-man bracket. We got Uriah Hall fighting Chris Weidman. Like, these guys are all going to contend. There's a lot of good options for him. So I think for Israel, this fight just happened. Sit and wait. Let's see how these fights play out in April. And let this essentially, this non-advertised 8-man tournament take place. Let's find out who the real number one contender is. I think there's so many good fights for him at middleweight. I like that he took the chance to go to light heavyweight, but I still feel, granted he lost, not taking anything away from Jan Blachowicz. I think the tougher challenges are still at middleweight. When you look at those names I just listed off. Those are all really tough fights for the champion. So I think he goes the route, establish your dominance by cleaning out a division, even if you have to do it 2 times over.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's just perfect timing, right? The fact that you just named off all those middleweight bouts that are coming up. I mean, these are guys that are all contenders that are fighting to get up for that championship. So it also was the perfect time for him to step away. That fight made sense when you look at it, because you've got these big fights at middleweight that have to take place before you really establish who's going to be the next number one contender. So it worked out perfect for Izzy. Now you get to sit back, rest up from that 5-round fight, and watch all these guys play out and which one of them is going to make that performance that stands out that you want to fight next. But another thing that before we get off of the topic of that fight, the scoring was a bit all over the place, right? Some judges were giving 10-8 rounds out. Dana was pissed off about that and feels that these guys are just being a little too liberal with these 10-8 rounds. I want to say, first off, I agree. I think that the 10-8 scoring system has gotten a little muddied over the last couple of years, and guys are getting them for a domination in a round, but not really beating the brakes off of somebody. I agree with Dana in the fact that I think you got to beat the crap out of somebody and almost finish them. The ref should be right there ready to step in before you get a 10-8 round. I mean, that's me. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. I think there is a place in the scoring system for the 10-8 round. Yeah. And I think you can simply get a 10-8 round from a knockdown. Like, you look at how boxing is. Like,
there you
knock a guy down, that's a point, you know? So I think that with knockdowns, I think that's a little more clear cut. But when Jan won these 10-8 rounds from the ground. And that's kind of where I specialize in terms of my style of fighting. And there's only 2 fights in my life in the UFC where I've gone to a decision and not won 10-8 rounds. And I'll tell you how I won those 10-8 rounds. That's a true story. Aside from RDA and aside from Neil Magny, I've gotten 10-8 rounds anytime I've gotten a decision in the UFC. To get a 10-8 round on the ground, it's not that the ref essentially has to almost be stopping it, but it's got to be, you are putting on an onslaught. You are attacking submission after submission, and you're going into mount, and you're landing ground and pound. Like, for example, when I fought Francisco Trinaldo, I landed over 100 ground strikes in the first round from mount. That's a 10-8 round. You know what I mean?
I agree with you.
Diego Sanchez, I won 10-8 rounds on Diego by surfing on top and attacking chokes, landing ground and pound, going back to the choke. Like, I think I got off like 5 submission attempts in a round, and they gave me a 10-8 round. So I think that it just has to be pure offense and literally no defense from the person you're fighting, to the point where they're just hanging on. So I agree with you that they're a little too giving with the 10-8 round right now. And you got to go back to making that to where you have to literally knock somebody down, or you have to put somebody on their heels through a whole round to give them a 10-8 round.
Yeah.
And on the note of putting people on their heels, let's talk Amanda Nunes and Megan Anderson. I mean, Paul, what can Amanda Nunes not do? We have seen so many shades and styles from Amanda Nunes. We've seen her fight tactical decisions. We've seen her go out and get a first-round knockout against Chris Cyborg. Now we've seen her go out in the first round against an ultra-tough Megan Anderson, who poses some of the biggest physical threats she's ever faced. This woman is as tall as me, and she can crack. And what does she do? She goes out there, knocks her down, gets on top, and hits a high level, triangle arm bar, puts it in the armpit, stretches it. Unpack Amanda Nunes for me. What was your thoughts on her performance?
Well, leading up to it, I did the pre-show and all that for ESPN, and I just kept saying that the reason that I had her winning that fight, not only because she's already the dominant Dumble champ and she's proven herself time and time again, but she can fight anywhere, just like you said. No matter where this fight goes, no matter what game plan she needs to pull out of her hat, she can do it. And I didn't expect it to be quite like that. I did think that she was going to get a submission, is how I picked that fight to end. Anyway,
look at this guy.
To show her power, to get it to the ground, and then throw on a slick submission like that. There's nothing left for her, first of all, in that division, right? The next step, obviously, in the way she's been trending to do things anyways, to go back down to 135 pounds, where I do feel there are true competitors for her to face. Right now, 145 is a little iffy. It's a little shaky, right? I think Megan Anderson was the last real challenge because she had the size, because she had the power, because she's been a former Invicta champion. It made sense. But now I think she's got to go back down, play out, and see what's going to happen at 135 pounds. And hopefully we can get somebody to come in there, because, I mean, right now she is by far the greatest female combat sports athlete of all time. I don't care about your boxing. I don't care who you're going to bring up. As far as females are concerned, she is the greatest combat sports athlete.
No, there's no doubt about that. She is the greatest combat sports athlete. You can't insert anybody into the conversation. I don't even want to try to elaborate who people would put in front of her, because I don't want to give anybody any shine. It's all Amanda Nunes. But there is a challenge out there left for her, Paul. There is a female at 135 pounds, tough champion, Juliana Pena. And if you look at it, Amanda just had a very smooth performance. She didn't
Right.
take a scratch on. There's not a scratch on her face. And Dana's already said he wants to keep her active. There is a date in May, Mother's Day weekend. Juliana Pena, very proud mother herself, and she's a teammate of mine. She's got this beautiful daughter, Issa. You got Amanda Nunes, the dominant champ, with her newborn daughter, bringing her into the limelight. There is no better fight to make just from that alone. Now let's talk about what Juliana Pena has done. Yes, she lost to Germaine Durandamine back at Fight Island, but she rebounded by submitting a Olympic silver medalist in the third round. She has evolved. That fight with Germaine, she was doing great up until the last minute. One small tactical error. But in this division, in this sport, we have seen people get title shots off of losses. We have seen people get title shots after rebounding with one win. There is no reason why Juliana Pena should not be the one put in that title fight, and there's the perfect date for him in May. The perfect date. I don't know where it's going to take place, whether it be a pay-per-view, whether it be on ESPN, whether it's on ABC. I don't know where it would be, but there is a date, and it is the perfect weekend to put these two moms in the octagon and let them fight for the Bantamweight title.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Well spoken. Are you getting 10% for what you just said? I'm curious.
Say again.
Are you getting a manager's 10% for your push there?
I'm doing this out of love. That's my girl. That's dude. Julie's been through so much, and it's like her only two losses in the UFC are to two of the best females in their division. Yeah. She lost to the number one bantamweight, Germaine Durandamine, and she lost to Valentina Shevchenko. In both fights, they were competitive up until she lost. And she's rebounded with a win, so she's not making her claim. She's not asking for a title fight on a loss. She knew what she had to do. She bounced back. She got a good win, a great signature win for her. She was matched up with Holly Holm. Holly is out. Her, she finally disclosed what the injury was today. I don't remember what it was, but that leaves one person right now. If you want to keep Amanda active, there is only one person at 135 pounds that is ready to go, and that's Julie Pena.
Yeah, I'm all about that fight. I agree. Two moms going at it. That date makes perfect sense. And, when you get the opportunity to fight, I mean, let's just even go back and talk about, we're talking that she's possibly the greatest female combat sports athlete, but I think she's reaching the point. Amanda Nunes, at this point in her career, she's transcending gender. There is no gender to be talked about right now. She is just one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time. When you go out there, I don't care if you're a female, male, you don't, non-binary, it doesn't matter to me. But when you go out there and dominate the way that she did over and over again, not take a scratch and be ready to turn around and fight possibly Juliana Pena next. I mean, we don't see this from men. We don't see this from the men in the division to be able to go back and forth. She's the only one that's been able to go and defend both titles seamlessly like that and not hold up either division. That does
no. I couldn't agree with you more. And that the biggest thing that has solidified her position as the greatest combat sports athlete of all time, across all genders, across all sports, is the fact that it's not just the winning, it's defending both belts. Amanda Nunes is not a small bantamweight. She's fit to be a featherweight. She is fit to be a featherweight fighter. And we see people win the belt at 145 pounds. Then when they win the belt at 155, they don't go defend the 45-pound belt. They hold it and they just sit on it. That's what we've seen happen. DC didn't hold up 205, but when he went from 205 to light heavyweight, or he went from 205 to heavyweight, won the belt at heavyweight, and then relinquished the title, which that's the right thing to do. But what I'm saying is Amanda Nunes, as hard as it is to go back down to bantamweight, she will do it. She will go back and forth. She will put her body through that. She will adjust her camps. She will do everything necessary in her power to defend both titles. That's so impressive.
It's impressive because, as fighters, we know how hard it is to make a weight class and do this and stay there. For you, example, moving up to 170. Once you do that, once you go smash those weights and put on a little weight, it's not easy to go back down. But let's talk about the things that did not go so well at 259 and a little bit of controversy, obviously, with Aljamain Sterling and Petr Yan. And, a fucking epic fight, back and forth, nonstop action. I'm out of my seat the whole time. Aljamain came out hard, came out fast. Petr Yan obviously did what he does. He found his boxing, found his range, started landing some sick trips and takedowns. And then we get that knee to the face to a grounded opponent, and all hell breaks loose. And what I really want to talk about here is that I think we need to discuss how these things are handled, right? Because I'm not throwing any refs under the bus. I know it's a lot of pressure when you're in that situation, but when you have a knee to the face like that and an athlete on the ground who is hurt, I don't care if you want to say he's acting, he's this and that. It doesn't matter. When you get blasted to the face like that and you're left writhing on the ground, it is not that athlete's decision to tell you, oh, yeah, I guess I'm okay to continue. Screw that, man. It needs to be made right then and there. Is this a DQ or what? Or are you telling him he has to fight and making it's not his decision? So I don't know what we have to do. Maybe you have an idea of what can we do to take this out of that fighter's hands. He should not have to make that decision.
No, and first and foremost, before I even get into anything I want to say, I want to elaborate on the fact that I do not in any sense think Peter Yan is a dirty fighter. I'm very passionate about this topic, and I don't want it to come off like I am smearing him in any way. I do not think Peter Yan's a dirty fighter. I want people to understand that. I think that there's a little bit of a language barrier between Yan and the official, and he can only understand his corner. And you said that there's essentially a gray area in the rules. It has to be concrete. It should not be questionable. Like, we all understand the back of the head rule. Nobody questions that. There's never a controversy in a fight of what the back of the head is. Why can't we get the same for the knee to a grounded opponent? Like, Demetrius Johnson came out, and if people back home forgot Demetrius Johnson is Mighty Mouse, one of the greatest fighters of all time. He put out a tweet saying that you should be able to knee a grounded opponent if they are stalling the fight on their knees. But that doesn't. Do I agree with him? Yeah, for sure. But that's not the rule. The rule is you can't hit a grounded opponent. You can't put that choice in the hands of the fighter. What do we do best, Paul? We fight. What we will fight with, our faces busted open. We'll fight with our legs swollen. We'll fight. I mean, essentially, a lot of us go in there in this like kill or be killed mentality. So when something like that happens, you can't just turn to the fighter after taking a shot like that and put it in his hands. Mark Smith is a great referee. I think he's awesome. He's very, this is a guy. He's a fighter, former fighter pilot. He takes his job so serious. He puts a lot of legwork into trying to be the best he can be at the toughest position outside of being a fighter. The toughest position is being a ref. That's a hard job. They get a lot of heat for trying to do the best they can.
Yeah.
But you gave him too much time. If that was a prelim fighter, I think that it would have been more instantaneous. I think it would have been like Johnny on the spot. Doc comes in. He says, Doctor asks Aljo, can you see it? And Aljo's like, I'm kind of struggling right now. And they still gave him like a minute or two. It's almost seemed like they're trying to wait for him to be like, yeah, I'm good. Like were they like reluctant to call the fight because it's a title fight? What I don't understand what took so long. And people need to understand that Aljamain Sterling made the right decision, because Aljamain Sterling is a heck of a fighter. He's super tough. He is there for a reason. But when you take a shot like that, if he gets back up and gets back in that fight, I don't think it would. I think he could have gotten seriously hurt. I think that he could have taken some more shots. That was a hard shot. If his knee was off the ground and he caught him with that legal knee, I think Aljo would have dropped and he would have gotten swarmed by Yan. So it's like that's a finishing blow. If that's a finishing blow, if his knee was if he was on his feet, that's a finishing blow. So it's like that was the right thing to be done for sure. So and that opens up the opportunities for a lot of other things. Do we do a Yan rematch? What do you want to happen next? What do you see happening? What should happen in this feud that we have, and how this bantamweight fight played out?
I mean, I think you have to have the rematch. I know there's some people out there that are saying it shouldn't be in an immediate rematch, and that, maybe another contender can. I don't agree with that, and I think Aljamain knows that that's the fight that has to happen. Right? It was very competitive, and I agree. First of all, I want to go back to you're right. If they let him continue, if he goes back out there and he gets knocked out bad and is sleeping on the canvas, we're all having a completely different conversation right now. We're talking about how could you do that? How could you send that fighter back out there and do that? So it didn't happen. The right decision was made to stop it. It took too long, I agree, and that needs to be a conversation that's happened with the commissions and the referees and being like, look, it doesn't matter what is on the line here. I don't care who's fighting. If it's Conor McGregor, Aljamain Sterling, Jan Blachowicz, doesn't matter. If somebody does an egregious knee to the face, whether he intended it or not, which I agree, think he was confused in the moment on what was going on. I don't think he went out. Obviously, he didn't do it on purpose for the people that would think that, right? This man's belt is on the line. Tons of money is on the line. His career is on the line. He's not going to just, you're a real asshole. I'm sorry, forgive my language. If you do that, right? You're really sick in the head if you want to just hurt somebody that bad and not win your belt. It doesn't make any sense. So I think rematch. I think that's the big fight for him. Forget the Triple C stuff and all that right now. I think that Petr Yan first, give him his shot. And if Aljamain can go out there and beat him properly like he wants to, then you are the champ. Not only are you the champ, but you've overcome some crazy odds, some crazy circumstances, and you deserve what's coming for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I don't see Jan being a malicious fighter. I don't think that he was. I think that he's the type of fighter,
but not a nasty fighter.
No, I think that he just wants to score offense from all positions. Like even early in the fight, he's throwing these axe kicks, and those are legal. I've thrown a few axe kicks down on a guy, on a grounded opponent in my day.
Yeah.
But I was even like, whoa, that's kind of risky because Aljo's like trying to roll under the legs. Like the axe, for the people back home, an axe kick, if an opponent's on his back, you throw the axe kick basically through their legs and try to stomp your heel on their gut. Yeah. And that's easy when the guy's trying to dip the ankle in like, I was like, whoa, he's flirting with danger, you know. So
he's a maniac.
I don't think there was nothing malicious about what he did. I just think that there was a big misunderstanding. And I agree, you have to do this rematch. What do fans love? Fans love bad blood. And there was these guys are already tipping at each other at the press conferences and on Twitter. Yeah. But now we have real bad blood. Now we have like Aljamain Sterling's side of, you know, you are a dirty fighter. What you did was malicious. Like, and you got Jan, you know, pleading his case. Imagine the promos they cut for this. This has shades of Khabib versus Conor. You know what I mean? The promos are nasty. And this is what fans love. Fans love bad blood. And I think you add another fun element to it when you make it a rematch. Personally, myself, I love rematches. The only thing I love more than rematches is I love trilogies. So we essentially have these setting for a rematch for sure. And depending on how that fight goes, which everything from what I saw the first time tells me this rematch is going to be sick. Yeah. We might have a trilogy as well. So this is what makes fighters great is when you can win and you can have these big moments and there's something extra to it. So this is good for both guys to fight in the trilogy or in the rematch. Forget about Triple C. Let's focus on Sandhagen, TJ. You know, some people might say that Sandhagen's the biggest loser in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
But I heard that he was going to fight Dillashaw. So there's a lot of moving parts to bantamweight right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that fight, man. I mean, I am such a Corey Sandhagen fan. The kid is so smooth, and he talks a lot about the mentality, right? The last time that I got to interview him when he was on Fight Island, fighting Marlon Moraes, he talked about he had to go in there and be meaner. And he talked about how Aljamain intimidated him, right? He had this presence about him and this energy, and he was like, I need to bring that to the table. So you're talking about a fighter who not only has all the skill sets and is just an incredible fighter and athlete, but now he's starting to get the mentality behind it and really prepare himself to go in there. I don't care who that kid's fighting. I want to watch him. And to be able to fight somebody like TJ Dillashaw, who has his own drama, right? He's finally making the comeback. He's chirping on Twitter at anybody and everybody. He's ready to go. That's the fight to make. Those two, the winner of that fights the winner of Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling, unless it's like you're talking about, if it's a crazy back and forth split decision drama type thing, or God forbid something else illegal happens, we might just have
a draw. What if it's a draw?
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
That'd be the worst thing ever.
Don't even bring it up. You just put it out into the world now, Mike. You just put that juju out in the world. So all the fans out here, Michael Chiesa, if that fight ends up happening and it's a draw, you can reach him at. Let me give your number out real quick, just so I.
Hey. You know, and there's the cool thing about TJ and Sandhagen is they train together. Yeah. There's an interview. I just saw this interview. I think this was just this last weekend, where but this is before Sandhagen got in the UFC, where TJ's like doing an interview talking about how he gets frustrated at the gym sometimes because guys get the better of him, like these guys not in the UFC named Corey Sandhagen. And I'm like, ooh, you go find that soundbite. You throw in the hype for this fight. You know, and this has shades of like Burns and Usman. You know, we like this like your teammates storyline. It makes the fights a lot very interesting
TJ as well. Cody and TJ, same thing, right? Oh, I'm going to knock you out. I'm knocking you out. But doesn't always play out that, right? What happens in the gym? We know how that is as fighters. There's guys that beat the brakes off me in the gym, but who knows how it would happen in a real fight. So it's that I love that. I love when you've got two guys that have trained together and one's gotten the better of the other, and then they get to compete in the octagon to see how it's really going to go down. Sign me up.
Yeah, and you know what else we're talking about all these great fights at Bantamweight, but let's not forget about Dominick Cruz, baby. Yeah, Dominick Cruz, UFC 259, man. Took on the young blood, took on the very tough Casey Kenny. I mean, this guy came surging through Fight Island, fought 2 fights within 20 days. I mean, what was your thoughts on Dominick Cruz's performance? I mean, that's your boy, man. You spent a lot of time with Dom, man. I'm sure you were very happy about it.
I've had a lot of conversations about training and things like that with Dom, and to see him go out there and find himself again, right? I remember watching it, and obviously I was working that night, but I was talking to Christine, and I'm like, man, he's finding his rhythm. I was like, he's finding his rhythm, and he got hit. He was in a fight, but he came out the other side with the decision. I thought it was correct. I thought he won that fight, and to see that footwork and that craziness that Dom has, but he found himself again. I think he's competitive again. And if he's healthy, you know, fingers crossed, I can't wait to see who he's going to go in there against next, because Casey Kenny is legit. That kid's got power. He's a southpaw, so he brings some awkwardness to it. He can wrestle. He's tough. He's fast because he's moving up. He used to fight at 125 pounds. And ever since he's moved up to 135, he's looked like a stud. That fight was back and forth and crazy, man. Both those guys I'm a huge fan of. Obviously, Dom's our boy. I work with him all the time, but I was a pretty big fan of Casey Kenny coming into that match as well. And I thought that he would give Dom a lot of trouble, and he did. And Dom figured it out, showed his true toughness, and showed that he's not done yet.
No, I totally agree. And he actually did battle through an injury. I don't know if you saw the picture. I think he got bursitis. Yeah. His elbow was blown up. I didn't even notice it in the fight. I was too busy paying attention to the freaking fist whizzing by his head. Seeing Dominick Cruz in top form, it's a rarity. He is a pioneer of a style that guys like Corey Sandhagen have picked up on. That, you know, when Casey Kenny says things like, yeah, we've seen it for, you know, 5-10 years, like we picked up on it. It's like, no, you don't know what it's like until it's right in front of you. When Dominick Cruz is in top form, it is a thing of beauty. I mean, there will never be – there's people that have the shades of Cruz, but there will never be another Dominick Cruz. And it's great to see him. You know how it is, 35 years old. That's still a lot of fight left in a guy at that age, and he's had injuries, but Dom is not the amount of time between fights is adequate for him. Injuries have always been his demon. Like, he has been plagued with some of the worst injuries I've ever heard of in this sport. Some freakish injuries, some things that are like 1 in a million type of stuff. And for him to space out his fights the way he has, there's a lot of fight left in this guy. And I think that the fight with Casey Kenny was the right move. Dom's always been in 5-round fights. He's always fighting the best guys. Like, you know what, Dom? Why don't you just take a step back? Why don't you fight a 3-round fight? Why don't you test yourself against a young up-and-comer instead of just constantly throwing yourself at the top of the heap? There's nothing wrong with, that's not a tune-up fight, because that's Casey Kenny, and there's no tune-up fights in the UFC. But there definitely is a difference between constantly fighting the guys in the top 5 and stepping back and fighting a guy that's on his way up. I think it was the right move for him.
Yeah, and another person that we just cannot possibly not mention here on this show is Islam Makhachev. I mean, you want to talk about a scary guy in this division for anybody at 155 pounds. I look at that fight and I'm like, damn. I did the post fight and they're like, oh, who's going to face him? And I was like, I'm going to put my hand up and say, I don't want to do it. I don't want to fight. There are certain guys in the division where when you get that phone call, you go, because you know what you're in for, right? When you fight a guy like Islam, you might as well just be fighting his teammate, who's one of the greatest of all time, Khabib, because Khabib is putting him over all the time, saying that this kid not only can wrestle like that, but his stand-up is on point, which he didn't even have to show really in that fight because his wrestling is so dominant. And as a wrestler yourself, Mike, you got to just watch a kid like him and be like, God damn, this kid is good.
Dude, the foot sweeps. That's what I love when I see Islam's foot sweeps. I mean, he's so crafty with them. Like he has that one video. It's like a viral video of him wrestling one of DC's guys. Indeed, it's Chase Saldate. Saldate's, top ranked in the nation. He's a lot younger than Islam. So no, I'm not saying anything bad about Saldate. He's a stud. He probably beat me in a wrestling match, but Islam did this head snap wrist.
Yes, toss. I saw that. Crazy.
Oh my God. But Islam, his whole UFC career up until this point, he's fought primarily grapplers. And while he has shown he has polished striking, he looks good on the feet. His bread and butter is his grappling. So he finally got the matchup where he got to showcase what makes him such a hype coming out of the Eagles MMA camp, coming out of the AKA camp. He got to show why everybody says he is as good as he is. Like I said, striking is good. He's beat a lot of very tough, very talented guys with his striking. But that's not been what's wowed us. What we saw against Drew Dober, you see that and you go, okay, now I see what they're talking about. The ceiling is very high for this young man. He's been in the UFC a long time. He's had unfortunate circumstances in what's made us not see him as much as we have. But he's on a 7 or 8 fight win streak right now. You got to get this guy to the top of the heap. He should not be ranked. He's went into this fight ranked. He's got to be up in the top 10.
Give him Tony, you think?
I like the Tony fight, but I also like the Chandler fight. I think that Chandler had a big win over Hooker, but let's see what Chandler's wrestling's all about. I think that this would be the fight. Everybody wants to put Islam, like the hype is high on Islam. Everybody says this is the next Khabib. This guy should be fighting for a title. He's got this awesome win streak, but it's not going to happen. It's not justifiable. Is a Tony Ferguson fight justifiable? Yeah, for sure. But then you got a guy like Chandler, who he just beat Hooker in a very devastating fashion. Some people are clamoring like, hey, he should be fighting at the top of the heap. But it's only one fight. I feel like these guys are kind of stuck in a similar position. I think you put these guys against each other, you get your money's worth out of Chandler, and this is a great test for Islam. He gets past Chandler, then Chandler, he moves on to fight for the title. But the reason I say Chandler, Paul Felder, is what if Mike Chandler's the guy to beat Islam? And what if Chandler's the man that brings Khabib back into the UFC? There's a little, you know what I'm saying? I'm just, you want to get, even DC said it. How do you get Khabib back? Does Islam have to lose? And I mean, prior to Chandler's fight against Dan Hooker, people were already saying, well, he should fight Khabib. He's the best lightweight out the UFC. Now you put the fight together, that both outcomes would work out just great.
I like it. But you know what? We've got to move on here, Michael, because it is time for 5-round rapid fire. Up first, prediction time. Yep. Edwards Muhammad. I got to go with my boy, my man, my teammate, Belal Muhammad. Listen, I know he's taking the fight on short notice, but the dude is a savage. And there's one thing that people forget about Belal. He's a hilarious man. He's funny. He's smart. He's nice to people. He's respectful. He has fun on Twitter. But the dude can fight. And let me tell you, everybody out there, when he shows up, there's one thing on that man's mind, and it is winning and becoming champion. I know it's in your division, but you got to respect Belal. Who do you have in this one?
Paul, I got to agree with you. I think Leon's super tough, but I think the layoff is going to become problematic. And usually I don't buy into the layoff and the ring rust thing, but the way Belal fights can make you feel that layoff, because he's going to get in your face from the get-go. He's going to create a lot of problems. I think the fight's going to be razor close. I think it's going to go all 5 rounds, but I'm going with Belal. I got to go with Belal. I think he's got the tools to make Edwards uncomfortable off the get-go. I could talk Edwards and Belal all day, but let's move on to round 2. Dominick Cruz has a very odd call-out, something I wasn't a huge fan of. Let's say Dominick Cruz gets to run it back with the microphone again. Who would you have liked to hear Dominick Cruz call out?
We were talking about it, and I might be stealing an answer here, but I would love to see him call out Jose Aldo. I think that's 2 legends of the sport. Now that Jose Aldo is down in that division, I feel like that's one of those guys that if you get the opportunity to fight him before your career is over, that's one you want to take. I mean, possibly another, 3-round fight, get his feet wet again, get in there with an absolute savage. If you can win that one, then maybe you start calling out the higher ranked guys and move towards the title. But forget about 5-round main events and title fights and just call out a legend, get another big W.
Yeah, and I think it'd be fun if they did that in blue UFC gloves. It's a little throwback to the WEC.
Yeah.
Shout out to my boy Reed Harris. I love that fight. I think that fight could be a lot of fun. But I also think a fight with Frankie Edgar could be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah.
You got Dominick Cruz's dynamic style with his footwork and the changing of the stances. And Frankie Edgar, he's super fast on the feet. I think it'd be a very technical fight, be a really fun fight. So I'd say that my pick for that would be Frankie Edgar. But if it was Jose Aldo, I would be disappointed.
I like them both too.
As long as they do it in blue gloves.
I would like that, a little throwback night. That'd be fun, a little throwback night. Get a bunch of those guys matched up for some throwback.
Do a James Krause versus Carlos Condit.
Yeah, come on, man. You could do so many. I love the WEC. So I'll end it with that. Number 4, let's talk about some awkward moments that happened. And I believe that Rakic getting his brown belt after a stand-up, I won't call it a battle because it was kind of a strategic play out there, getting his brown belt. What do you think about that?
Well, it's actually round 3, Paul, but
round 3. Round 3. I'm not a math major, Michael. I'm not a math major.
Hey, don't worry, I'm not either. I'm just listening to the guy in my earpiece. But nonetheless, I have been in this sport. It will be 13 years in May. Cinco de Mayo was when I started training mixed martial arts in 2008. I am still a purple belt, and I have gone out and I have submitted a multitude of black belts, and I say that with all due respect, but I consistently train jiu-jitsu. I am in the gym all the time, and I put my skills to the test when I compete, and I am still not a brown belt. That was not the time or the place for something like that. I'm not a softie. I don't feel disrespected. I'm just very perplexed. But I think that there's a lot of jiu-jitsu players around the world that watch that fight and went, that doesn't make any sense. Happy for Alexander Rakic. He got the win. He got his brown belt. But I just think that was a little wonky. Wonky.
I remember being like, okay. Might as well just giving him a bouquet of flowers. Like, all right, what are we just handing out weird things after fights like that? Didn't make any sense. I know Daniel Gracie, the one fight that I had was contemplating on bringing, I think it was my purple belt at the time, and I ended up choking out Darren Cruikshank that night, and he didn't do it. He's like, I don't want to put that pressure, and then it's like, and that didn't end up happening. But I'm also still a purple belt, but for a reason. You should be a brown belt, I feel, but I like that because that means your coaches, they're slow playing you because they don't want you to get a big head. You're already a good. I don't want that head getting any bigger.
Hey, one thing. The one last thing I'll say before we move on to the real round 4. Before we move on to the real round 4. Excuse me, is maybe Rakic, maybe it was a brown belt in like karate because it was a little bit of a little point sparring match. Maybe it was karate. But look, we'll move on to round 4. Let's talk Triple C. Okay, the fight between Sterling and Jan gets over. Of course, he does everything in his power to stay relevant with his tweets and the bashing of male and female fighters. He's all over the map. He's challenging Nunes. He's challenging Jan. He's challenging Volkanovski. He's all over the map. What do you make? Like, is he still relevant? Like, does he still have a place in this conversation to fight for the titles? Like, what is your take on what he's trying to do? The Twitter antics, the stuff with him and Sterling. Now they're kind of rumbling about Sterling and him fighting. Like, what do you take away from all this Triple C nonsense?
Well, let me preface this with saying that I have nothing but respect for a man who has done what he has done. Right? You go out there. He is a phenomenal fighter. He was a phenomenal Olympian and a wrestler, gold medalist. You can't take any of that away. But one of the things that this about me that I hate more than anything is just all the unnecessary, stupid BS, fakeness, making up characters, pretending to be something that you just simply aren't, drives me up a wall. So for me, shut up or get in the octagon is all I have to say about that matter.
Yeah, dude, I'm in the same boat as you. That's why when I asked you the question, I said, what do you make of his nonsense?
Yes.
I totally agree. I watched Henry Cejudo win the gold medal when I was 20 years old coming up. I mean, he won the gold medal in 2008. Yeah, I watched him wrestle. It was phenomenal. I've watched him win these awesome title bouts. His career as an athlete has been one of the best. Mm-hmm. But I was not a fan of the antics when he was competing, but I understand why he was doing it. He's trying to sell the fight. He's trying to build a character. I understand that 100%. But at this point, it just shut up or fight. Like, it's not you're not selling anybody on anything else other than the fact that you're just trying to stay relevant. Okay, yeah. That's all this is. Like, you're not going to fight. You're not going to fight Sterling. You're not going to come back and fight. We know behind the scenes, I know what he wants. Okay, and that comes to monetary things, and that comes to the fights he wants. He wants to go fight Volkanovski and try to be C4. I don't know what the hell he'd do with that, but nonetheless, it's like, this just doesn't make sense. Put up or shut up. Get in there and fight. I don't even like the trash talk if you're competing. Like, I'm like you. I'm very meat and potatoes. Like, hey, we're already going to fight, so there's nothing left to say. I'm going to punch you in the face. I don't need to tell you about how I'm going to do it or what I'm going to do or none of that. I'm just a show up and fight guy. So it was hard for me to deal with it before, and now it does nothing for me. And I think
come back and fight, then do it. I have no problem with that. But again, if you're not, then that's just ridiculous. All right, round 5. Dana White has hinted at returning to capacity, full fans in a stadium. He doesn't want to do this, 20%, 30%. He's talking about selling it out, making it legit. What excites you again about A, maybe competing with a sold out crowd, and B, even being there working the desk or working the shows?
I mean, first and foremost, the fans are the backbone of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the UFC, Dana White, they've built this brand, and they are phenomenal at their job, but it would not have came to fruition without the fans. Now, I never competed at the Apex or on Fight Island without a crowd. When I fought Neil Magny, I got a little sprinkle of it. I think there's a couple thousand people there. I got a little taste, but as an athlete, that's what makes fighting in the UFC so special. I'll never forget this, Paul. UFC 157 was my UFC debut after Ultimate Fighter. Honda Center, Ronda Rousey's debut, against Liz Carmouche, Dan Hendo and the Cheetah as the co-main event, and that was my first real taste of the UFC. As an athlete, when you are in the middle, you know what it's like. When you're in the center and the fans are around you, when they cheer, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. You can feel the cheers on your skin. That's what makes being in the UFC so special. I love being the man in the arena. I love being the guy on the big stage under the bright lights with the big crowd. That's what this is all about. And I haven't got to experience that in this new role that I'm in, doing analyst work, getting to work the desk. I haven't got to experience that from that standpoint as well. But I miss the fans, and I love the fact that Dana's holding out. That he's like, I don't want to half-ass this. I'm not gonna do 3,000 people in T-Mobile. We're not coming back until we can have a full capacity arena. We're going to be the first to do it, and it's going to be bigger and better than it was before. And we already know how great the UFC is.
Yeah,
I'm excited to have the fans back.
Oh my gosh, man! Same thing for me. That moment had to be in New Zealand, right? My first main event, fighting Dan Hooker in New Zealand, in Auckland, all those fans. I mean, you could feel. Another one was Scotland when I fought Stevie Ray. Bro, I could feel the place shaking. When Buff announced us, I couldn't hear him announce Stevie Ray over the fans in attendance that night. It was absolutely epic. So I agree with you. I cannot wait for that. That makes me excited about possibly getting back into that octagon. I can tell you that, this whole COVID era and everything that's going on, we've done it. Dana's a pioneer, got us through it. And, you see other sports coming back, but to do it for the people, to do it for the fans, our friends and family in attendance, that's what it's all about. And on that note, I think that's a good time to say that's the end of this show. Thanks for anybody that watched this UFC Roundup. Me and Michael Chiesa, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to preview UFC 260 and to talk about the results of Brunson and Holland, which is coming up shortly in a couple weeks. So thanks again for joining us, guys. We're going to do this every 2 weeks. Michael, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Paul, I could talk to you for hours. This is like when we get done with the desk show, we're having some cold ones and hanging out and talking. Dude, it's always good to chat with you. I'm glad we get to share it with the world. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I look forward to talking to you guys here in 2 weeks.
Awesome. All right. UFC Roundup. We out. Peace out.